Hey guys, happy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed it. I got a little bit of sun today. I'm a little red, so my favorite season of the year, so I'm very excited to be spending a lot of time outside. So we're going to finish chapter 20 this week. So we did the permanent waving we did the permanent waving portion last week. So this week we'll do the chemical hair relaxing. So with relaxers, the main thing to keep in mind is that it is an extremely strong chemical. I know last week we talked about perms a little bit and where they fall on the pH scale. So we know, just a quick review, the higher the number on the pH scale it is, so it's 1 to 14, if the closer it is to 14, the more alkaline it's going to be. So relaxers fall at a 13. And for reference, Drano is at 14. So it is very, very, very strong, and it can potentially be extremely damaging to the hair. But I wouldn't be too worried about it. If this is something that your client gets, you just have to be mindful. So the first thing I want you guys to highlight is the definition of chemical hair relaxing. So it is a process that rearranges the structure of curly hair into a straighter or smoother form. So last week we had talked about the side bonds, right? So the three that we talked about were disulfide, salt, and hydrogen side bonds. So with the relaxer, it has the same chemistry as a perm in the way that it actually breaks the disulfide bond to rearrange the structure of the hair, right? So we kind of talked about that last week, how the bond is broken, and then once it's wrapped around the perm rod, it's then shaped back in by reconnecting those disulfide bonds. With relaxing, it's the same way, it's just opposite. So of course we know that there are a million types of curly hair, from straight to curly, extremely curly, wavy. You can have thin curly hair, you can have coarse curly hair. There's a whole variety of options that you can have. I don't think that relaxers are as popular for curly girls anymore, because I feel that a lot of girls or people who have curly hair are wearing their hair more straight now. And if they did want it to be smoother or more manageable, I do find that clients are leaning a lot more towards the keratin, like smoothing treatments. But you will still run into people who get their hair relaxed. So over on 618, there's a little caution box at the top there. Just highlight where it says, relaxers are extremely alkaline and can literally melt or dissolve the hair if used incorrectly. So like I had mentioned earlier, it is very similar on the pH scale to Drano. Also too, if you guys think about, for those of you who were with me the last unit, we talked in the waxing chapter how Nair is basically like a mini relaxer. It does the same thing, but like on a smaller scale, of course, with like leg hair or armpit hair, whatever you choose to use to remove it. But it's literally, it could potentially melt the hair off if used incorrectly. So again, it's very important that we're just very aware of what we're doing, as with all chemical services, of course. Under thio relaxers, I would like you guys to highlight that definition. So thio relaxers use the same ATG that is used in permanent waving, but at a higher concentration and a higher pH, which is above 10. Basically, we're going to highlight that whole paragraph, but thio relaxers are also thicker with a higher viscosity. So then highlight that definition. It is the measure of the thickness or thinness of a liquid that affects how the fluid flows, making them more suitable for application as a relaxer. So basically what all of that is saying is that the thio relaxers, if you guys remember, we did talk about thio last week. Thio relaxers are very similar, like we had said, where it rearranges like the disulfide bonds and how everything clicks back together. Of course, it is at a higher pH. Perms typically fall at a 9, and relaxers are going to be close to 13. And then also too, the actual like formula of the product is thicker. So you guys will notice, obviously with perms, we have those little liquid bottles where we, apply it right to the rods like that. The thio relaxers actually usually come in a big tub, and it doesn't come with 2 steps, but it is still technically a 2-step process, similar to permanent waving. which we do get into. So just like with perms, right, we still have to neutralize the hair, which is the second step, right? With relaxers, it's usually a shampoo and conditioner. So at the school, you guys might have seen them. They're those little like brown shampoo bottles. It'll say like pH balancing shampoo or neutralizing shampoo, whatever. But because this is an extremely high pH, we need to make sure that once that cuticle is open, because if you guys remember, what actually raising the pH does is it's causing that cuticle to open more and more and more. So when the cuticle is blown open like that, we need to make sure that we're going in and we're sealing it shut afterwards with a more acidic product. So something that's on the other end of the pH scale. And then with thio relaxer application, pretty much for all relaxers across the board, we do know how, well, we talked about it in the school before, where you part the mannequin into 4 sections, and then starting ½ inch, a ¼ inch to ½ inch away from the scalp, you are going to apply from that point down, and you're going to leave about ½ inch left on the ends. And then you're going to go through, basically you're just doing the mid shaft first, and then because of course the ends are going to be more porous, and because the hair up top isn't going to be too damaged yet, they're both going to be more, they're going to work quicker. So that's why we save those parts for the very end, because like we said, we don't want to, this is a strong chemical that we're working with. Sorry, my dog's here if you hear him whining. So by sitting on the scalp too, we could potentially cause scalp burns, things like that. So that's why we usually just wait till the end for that, okay? So at the bottom, we have Japanese thermal straighteners. So if you would like to highlight those first 2 lines, Japanese thermal straightening, sometimes called thermal reconditioning or TR, combines the use of thio relaxer or flat ironing. So this is similar to a keratin treatment in the sense that you're using a flat iron. So you're actually shampooing and conditioning still, and then after the hair is dried, after you've applied the product, then you're going in and smoothing it out. This obviously requires heat, but relaxers typically don't require heat. You might have heard of Japanese perms as well. It's a similar concept. They actually put the perm rods in the hair and then they hook you up to this machine with like wires attached and everything. It kind of looks like the original perms that we talked about way back in chapter 1. Obviously, with the Japanese treatments, they're not very popular here. They're going to be more popular in the Asian countries. So then we have the hydroxide relaxers. So if you'd like to highlight those first 2 lines, the hydroxide ion is the active ingredient in all hydroxide relaxers, which are very strong alkalis with a pH over 13. And that's the pH I was talking about, very close to Drano. So hydroxide relaxers and thio relaxers are not compatible. So if you use one, you can't use the other. And we'll talk a little bit more on the next page why. Highlight where it says, it's the second paragraph under hydroxide relaxers. Hydroxide relaxers are not compatible with thio relaxers, permanent waving, or soft curl perms due to the difference in chemistry. Again, this is very high in the pH. And then jump down to where it says the lanthionization, which that is the process by which hydroxide relaxers permanently straighten the hair. Relaxers remove a sulfur atom from the disulfide bond, because if you guys remember from last week, the disulfide bond is where the 2 sulfur atoms are connecting those polypeptide chains. And they convert it into a lanthionine bond. So what this does, it takes away one of the sulfur atoms and removes it, okay? And it just stays broken pretty much. And that's why after this is done, it's permanently straight, can never go back. So if you've ever seen girls or people in general who are transitioning from the straight relaxers to curly hair, you'll notice that their hair will start to grow in very curly and they'll just leave the ends straight. And that can never be re-curled up and not even with a perm either, just because it's extremely damaging to the hair. My aunt a couple years ago got a perm because she wanted like a loose like beach wave kind of something like this where she didn't have to curl her hair ever or anything. and she didn't like it. I think she went to, this was before I was in school or anything. Otherwise, I would have put my foot down to this. But she got her hair permed, and it was too curly for her. So what she did, she put a relaxer over it, thinking that it would loosen the curl up. But what actually ended up happening is it caused her hair to fall out. Just because the product was extremely damaging, and obviously she was over processing her hair. So she ended up getting, like, she would kill me for telling you guys this, but she got like this huge, like almost bald patch right here. And she tried all different types of treatments and products to get it to grow back. And then eventually she just had to get a hair transplant. So obviously, again, another reason why we just need to be mindful of the products that we're using. So over on 620, again, there's another little caution box at the top. I'm gonna have you guys highlight that entire thing. So the application of a thio relaxer or thio permanent on the hair has been treated with a hydroxide relaxer will not properly relax or curl the hair and may cause extreme damage, dehydrate the hair, and or cause hair loss or breakage. Hair that has been treated with hydroxide relaxers is not compatible with thio relaxers or soft curl permanents. So it's gonna create a similar effect to putting like 40 volume lightener on somebody who has previously box colored hair. It's just kind of like, probably wouldn't do it. Okay. So underneath types of hydroxide relaxers, so the first one we have is the metal hydroxide relaxers. Just highlight where it says all metal hydroxide relaxers contain only one component and are used exactly as they are packaged in the container, no mixing necessary. This is typically the relaxer that we will use in the classroom, and this one again is going to get neutralized with that like pH balancing shampoo. And then we have lye-based relaxers. Highlight where it says sodium hydroxide relaxers are commonly called lye relaxers. So this is the probably most common type of relaxer, but it's also, again, I would say all the relaxers are very strong, but they're saying this one in particular is very strong and could potentially cause like scalp burns and irritation, things like that. So somebody, if they have a sensitive scalp, you would just want to make sure that they're aware of that. And then the no lye relaxers highlight where it says lithium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide relaxers are often advertised and sold as no mix, no lye relaxers. So there's another type of hydroxide relaxers. It's called guanidine hydroxide relaxers. These also are going to be advertised as no lye. Highlight where it says guanidine hydroxide relaxers contain two components that must be mixed immediately prior to use. So this is going to be the type of relaxer that's similar to like the waving, like the perm and the waving solution. So we do have those, usually we have step 1 and step 2 that get mixed together, right, in the perm. So that's similar to that. This is going to be more for the sensitive scalp clients. It's going to be just a little bit less strong, I guess. And then of course we have no or low pH relaxers as well. So these again are going to be similar to the hydroxide relaxers where they're just a little bit more gentle. And then we have base and no base relaxers. So highlight where it says base relaxers require the application of a protective cream to the entire scalp prior to the application of the relaxer. So of course we know with all relaxers, we typically outline the scalp with like cholesterol or lotion or conditioner, something to protect the scalp so that it's not burning them right here. So the no base relaxers just means that we don't have to apply the base beforehand. So highlight where it says do not require the application of a protective base cream. So what they do actually is they mix in that protective base cream into the formula. So when it gets applied to the hair, the heat from the scalp actually causes that cream to kind of like almost like melt and create a barrier in the relaxer. So you can almost think of it as like a built-in Olaplex. You just have to remember that base relaxers require that you put on the base, and then no base relaxers, you don't have to put a base on it, or it comes with the base in it. And then at the bottom of 621, at the top of that caution box, highlight where it says, make sure that the client has not had hair coloring containing metallic salts, such as gradual or progressive hair colors, before applying either thio or hydroxide relaxers to the hair. Extreme damage or breakage can occur. So again, they're talking about box color in this situation, but I would say just be mindful, especially like somebody like myself, my hair would not respond well to a relaxer, only because it's fairly fine, only because I've lightened it so much and it's already pretty damaged. So over on 622, so we do have different relaxer strengths. So first thing I would like you guys to highlight, it says, and this is under relaxer strengths, the difference in strength of hydroxide relaxers parallels the concentration of hydroxide. So then highlight where it says mild strength relaxers are formulated for fine, color treated, or damaged hair. I think that's pretty, I would say that makes sense, and then of course the regular strength is going to be somebody with a medium texture, not too damaged, not too thick, not too thin, things like that. And then of course the super strength is going to be for those extremely curly resistant clients. Of course, if we're not sure what type to use, definitely would recommend applying a test strand beforehand, just to make sure that, we don't choose one that's too strong or one that might not quite do the job the whole way through. So then periodic strand testing. So first, I'm gonna have you guys highlight 5 lines under here. So highlight where it says, after the relaxer is applied, smooth and gently press the strand to the scalp and remove product using the back of a comb and applicator brush or your finger, of course with gloves. Be gentle. If the strand remains smooth with no visible curl pattern, it is sufficiently relaxed. If the curl returns, continue processing. Now, of course, this depends on how curly the hair is, but typically relaxers, from the time that it first touches the head and is thoroughly applied, you have 25 minutes to get it all on and get it all off. And of course, if their hair is curlier, they might have to wait a couple more minutes, but when we're actually going in and doing the strand test, right, we're going to take whatever section we're focused on, and you're gonna have it, and you're gonna just kind of smooth everything out as straight as you can with the product still in. And then you'll see if the hair kind of bumps back up a little bit, that means that it is not thoroughly processed, and you can let it sit for just a little bit longer. So of course, we've talked about already how relaxers in general need to be neutralized. Just to keep in mind that rinsing out the product alone is not going to completely remove all the product, and it's not also going to thoroughly neutralize the hair. So we just have to make sure that we're going in with that pH balancing shampoo and conditioner. And in the book, they've actually talked about a pH shampoo where it changes colors, so that way when the pH of the hair is restored. It's usually a pinkish color. It's pretty cool. So then as far as application, like I said, it is very similar. As far as the retouch for a hydroxide relaxer, it's going to be similar to how we would apply a retouch for a color. Like I said, we just need to be mindful that we're moving quickly. A lot of times, if you've ever seen somebody do it in the salon, they usually take some kind of spatula and they just slap it on, and they take big chunks and they get it on quick. They are quick with it. And that's what you want to be mindful with, because we've said this is an extremely strong product, okay? Go ahead and highlight the definition of normalizing lotions. So these are conditioners with an acidic pH that restores the pH before the final neutralizing shampoo. So again, just part of a neutralizing, Bruce, relax. Just part of neutralizing the hair afterwards. And you'll notice it says acidic. So again, relaxer is alkaline and the shampoo is going to be acidic, so we need to bring it back down. So of course, safety precautions with relaxing. So with any chemical service, right, we're going to do a thorough consultation with the client. So just like with any chemical service, we're going to ask really important questions, you know, what have they previously done to their hair? Is it box color? You know, how do they normally style it every day? Just make sure, you know, too, that you're making the client aware, like, you know, after this is done, your hair can't be curly again, blah, blah, blah. While we're talking to our client, of course, usually when I'm doing my consultation with my client, I'm usually brushing their hair and just kind of getting a feel for their texture. I might be like running my finger through their scalp just to see if there's any like crazy bumps or anything. Of course, if they have scalp abrasions, we need to make sure not to do this service on them because it could cause more burns, things like that. If their hair, we need to check the condition of their hair, if it's damaged, or if it's been previously treated with other services or whatever. Again, that would be a situation where we might not want to do this. If they have previously had a texture chemical service, we need to find out what it was, and then from there we need to make sure that we're not applying a thio relaxer. If they've already had hydroxide relaxer or vice versa, or if they've had a perm, then we can't relax it afterwards. If somebody has their hair colored, we want to make sure that it's no more, they're saying in the book, rule of thumb, it's no more than 2 shades lighter than their natural hair color, because anything more than that could potentially be lightened, and then if it's lightened, then there's just more room for damage, and you just would want to avoid it. Also too, before a relaxer application, you do not want to shampoo the hair, and the reason why is when the hair is dirty, we have those natural oils on the scalp, right? So what happens is if you shampoo the hair beforehand, you're slightly exfoliating the scalp, and you're removing that top layer of dead skin cells and oils, things like that. So that right there is taking another barrier away between the client's scalp and the relaxer. So it might just cause more irritation. Their scalp might itch a little bit more. It might turn red. So just be mindful of that. Of course, you want to make sure their hair is dry. Make sure we're applying base cream. Make sure that you yourself are wearing gloves during this because your fingers will hurt. And this is all just like making sure that you're not getting it in the eyes. Make sure that, you know, you're doing your periodic strand tests. No scratching or anything with the combs or finger. Like, just make the client aware that if it is burning them, to let you know so that you can remove it from their hair. Thoroughly rinsing, things like that. These are all pretty like common sense, I would say. Just make sure that you're shampooing and getting all the product out. You don't want the client to get home and be like, oh, here's a clump of hair coming out because she didn't shampoo the hole underneath or something. As far as using styling tools, this is such a strong chemical. Hopefully, first of all, if they're getting a relaxer, they won't need to straighten their hair afterwards, but, you know, say for some reason they wanted to curl it or something, just be mindful with that. Make sure you're sending them home with moisturizing products and things like that. Of course, keeping client records so you can look back every so you can look back every appointment and just make sure, you know, that if there's something you need to alter in the next appointment, things like that. Release statement, we've talked about those before. And of course, make sure that you yourself have a thorough understanding of the relaxers if you choose to offer this as a service. Okay, so then we have the keratin-based straightening treatments. So we've talked about these before. The one that I use at my salon is called Brazilian Blowout, and the one that you guys use at the school is Keratin Complex, which we just had a class. I can't even remember when that was, but I think it must have been back in January or something. We had that keratin class, and most of you guys had gotten certified. So basically how keratin treatments typically work is you're going to shampoo the hair basically to the point that it's squeaky clean. And now this is kind of, you know, some of these steps get flip-flopped around depending on what that specific brand says to do. But with the Brazilian Blowout, we shampoo the client like, I think 4 times. Like, they literally say that the hair has to squeak. And that's how you know it's ready. So then you take them back while their hair is still damp. Of course, you want to towel dry it. And then you're just going to lightly comb the product through. and then you go through, blow dry, and straighten the hair. And then with the Brazilian blowout, you actually have to shampoo the treatment out, and then restyle their hair for them. With you guys, I believe you shampoo it, don't condition, dry it, then put the product in, then straighten it, or you let the product sit and then you go back and blow dry it, and then you straighten it, and they should be good to go. And then with the keratin complex, they can't do like the tucking behind the ears, they can't curl it, no ponytails, glasses, things like that, for 72 hours. With the Brazilian blowout, since we actually shampoo them before they leave, they don't have a waiting period like with the keratin complex. And there's pros and cons to how both of them are done. But basically, how we kind of like what we talked about last week, we talked about the keratin protein. When hair is damaged, right, what the keratin does is it goes in and it fills all those potholes that are in the strands of hair. It just kind of seals everything together. So this is not permanent like the permanent waving or relaxing. This is usually, they call it semi-permanent in the book, which actually I'm going to have you guys highlight. It's the second paragraph. It says keratin straightening treatments work by fixing the keratin in place in a semi-permanent manner. They do not break bonds. So they're not removing any sulfur atoms like the perms and relaxers are. It's just kind of filling potholes in, and kind of, it just smooths the hair, and usually it helps with frizz. So a lot of times, somebody like myself, right, like a looser wave, if I were to put the Brazilian blowout or a keratin complex in my hair, it would probably make my hair completely straight. I think that keratin treatments are a good option for somebody who, you know, they want to have some texture to the hair, but maybe they want a little bit more manageability, is that a word, to their hair, just get a little bit more control over it, maybe loosen their curl up a little bit, things like that. Of course, depending on the product that you're using, there will be different temperature settings depending on their hair texture. So usually with the more coarse hair, you can crank it up to about 400, and with finer hair, you're going to be in the lower 300s with that. Again, with the keratin complex, the clients do need to wait 72 hours before they can actually shampoo their hair, and in that 72 hours, they can't get it wet, they can't sweat, they can't, you know, no ponytails, nothing. Like, it needs to stay straight that whole time. So one thing, if you have a client who gets this done, and maybe it's really hard for them to go, what, 72 hours, that's like 3 days. You guys know I'm not good with math, but during those 72 hours, right, if they're gonna have a hard time not messing with their hair, or you might think, well, in the shower there's going to be humidity, they actually have anti-humidity caps on Amazon that when you put them on, they completely block out moisture. So even if you don't have keratin treatment in your hair, if you just don't shampoo your hair every day, and maybe you spend a long time straightening it the day before, you don't want it to curl back up, I would suggest getting that. I think it's either $12 or $20 on Amazon, something like, just type in anti-humidity cap. So over on 626, so in the book they're saying they eliminate up to 95% of frizz and curl and last 3 to 5 months. Again, that depends on the product that you're using. That depends on how intense you're doing the service. So with the Brazilian blowout, the higher the higher the temperature on the straightener, and the more passes that you do on the hair can actually it'll create more smoothness in the hair and reduce frizz, which that's the cool thing about Brazilian blowout, is that it's a little bit more customizable. So if you wanted, say you did have somebody who had fairly curly hair and they just wanted to reduce frizz, you could do the straightener maybe 2 or 3 passes at a medium volume, and it will just smooth their curl out instead of completely eliminating it. Of course, again, with any service, we need to make sure that we're doing a consultation. So things that need to be kept in mind is, of course, you're fine. Things that need to be kept in mind with keratin services, of course, their hair history. Do they have highlights? Are they previously lightened? Because usually they have to create a separate product for lightener and blonde clients. Other things you might want to ask, of course, make sure they're aware of the maintenance. Make sure that they are sent home with the product. At my salon, we have like initial, like if it's your first time getting if it is your first time getting a Brazilian blowout at my salon, the price is a little bit higher than it would be for maintenance appointments, only because it's a bundle deal. Like, we don't give you the option to take home the shampoo and conditioner. Like, we give it to you your first time, and then of course when you come back the next time, the price will be a little bit lower, but you still can buy the product. Make sure that they're aware of the 72 hours, avoiding moisture, not when they get the keratin treatment, again, like no ponytails, even like wearing glasses, sometimes it like bumps the hair out a little bit. And if it does, of course, accidentally get crinkled or something, because of course, like, I personally have terrible deadhead, so I would never make it a day without messing up my straight hair. But if that happens, tell clients to just run it over with a low heat setting on their iron as soon as they can. Obviously, some of these situations are unavoidable because of jobs or something. They might have to pull their hair back. Just make sure that they straighten it when they can. So with, permanent color and highlights, as far as in like relation to the keratin treatments, you can color somebody in the same appointment, but you're going to want to do the color first and then the keratin second. I'm not sure about keratin complex, but with Brazilian blowout, if you do color first, because the permanent color actually like low-key clarifies the hair, so that way when you go to do the initial shampoo for the Brazilian blowout, you don't have to do as many shampoos because the color is already kind of taking out some of that oil beforehand. With keratin straightening and toners and glosses and things like that, you can, I would say, do it beforehand, but if for some reason they wanted to do it after, they would have to wait 3 to 5 days or until that initial like 72 hours is up before they can come back and get that done. So the last thing we're going to talk about really quick is the soft curl permanent reforming. So highlight the definition of a soft curl permanent. It is a thio-based chemical service that reformats curly and wavy hair into looser and larger curls and waves. So basically, this is a combination of a thio relaxer and a thio perm. All you're doing is you're wrapping their curly hair into very large perm rods, and you're just reforming the curl. That's really all it is. So some safety precautions for relaxing and curl reforming. So very similar to all the other ones we've talked about. Check for abrasions. Make sure you're doing a thorough analysis. Client records. If you want them to sign a release form, of course, do that as well. This isn't anywhere in the book, but just make a little like note on the side, like I do here. Just put that start applying the relaxer to the most resistant area first, which is going to be the back of the head. You'll often find that a lot of times people can have like a looser curl in the front, but in myself included, they'll have like a very coily curl in the back. That's where you're going to want to initially apply the relaxer. Of course, same thing, we're not putting the soft curl permanent on it because it is thio based on somebody who's already had a hydroxide relaxer in their hair. Yeah, these are all very just similar to what we've talked about before. Just making sure that their hair is in good condition. Make sure you're applying base creams and things like that. Strand tests, of course. Make sure you're not scratching. Make sure you're checking the curl pattern to see if it's forming or not. And then of course also make sure that you're neutralizing afterwards. So that is all I have for you guys for chapter 20. This test again will be on Friday, so we'll be finishing the rest of the chapter 20 assignments this week. So again, if you guys have any questions at all about anything, or if you need me to clarify anything that we talked about today, just shoot me a message and we will work it out. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your week. I think it's going to be pretty nice this week, so hopefully if you guys are able to, definitely get some sun. All right, stay safe